What if the wealth you work for, save, and plan your future around isn't actually wealth at all? What if the numbers growing on screens, the statements arriving in your inbox, and the promises printed on official documents are not evidence of value but evidence of belief? Belief that those numbers will still mean something tomorrow. Belief that someone, somewhere, will honor the promise behind them. And belief, above all, that this system has always worked this way. Here's the mystery most people never stop to question. For most of human history, wealth had weight. You could touch it, store it, defend it, and lose it. Today, wealth has no weight at all. It exists as symbols, contracts, and digits, and somehow, without a single global announcement. Paper wealth replaced real value and almost no one noticed when it happened. To understand how this quiet transformation occurred, we have to go back to a time when money was not an idea, but an object. Early economies revolved around things that required effort to obtain. Land had to be cultivated, livestock had to be raised, metals had to be mined. Gold and silver became money not because they were shiny, but because they were scarce, durable, and costly to produce. Value was inseparable from labor and limitation. You couldn't create wealth out of thin air. Every unit of money represented real sacrifice somewhere in the system. As trade expanded, carrying physical wealth became dangerous and inconvenient. Goldsmiths and early banks offered a solution. Store your metal safely and receive a paper receipt instead. These receipts were not wealth themselves. They were claims on real wealth sitting in a vault. At first, this system strengthened trust. Paper made commerce faster, safer, and more efficient. But hidden inside this convenience was a powerful temptation, one that would change everything. Bankers noticed that depositors rarely came to claim all their gold at once. The metal stayed still, while the paper moved constantly. So banks began issuing more receipts than the gold they actually held. As long as confidence remained, the illusion worked. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking. The moment paper claims quietly multiplied beyond real value. The system didn't collapse immediately because belief filled the gap between reality and promises. Governments soon recognized the power of this arrangement. Wars were expensive, empires were costly, and raising taxes had limits. But issuing paper backed by confidence rather than metal offered something unprecedented: the ability to fund massive ambitions without immediate pain. Central banks emerged to coordinate this new system, acting as lenders of last resort and guardians of trust. Money became less about what existed and more about what could be promised. The real turning point came when papers stopped pretending to be a claim on anything at all. Step by step, gold backing was weakened, suspended, then abandoned. Each step was justified as temporary, necessary, or technical. Emergency measures became permanent policies. By the time most people realized what had changed, money was no longer tied to scarcity or effort. It was tied to policy decisions, debt issuance, and economic growth targets. Paper wealth didn't just rise, it exploded. Credit became the engine of prosperity. Homes, businesses, and entire nations were built on borrowed money. Financial markets grew far faster than the real economy beneath them. Stocks, bonds, derivatives, and complex instruments multiplied claims on future value. The system rewarded leverage, not restraint. Wealth was no longer created primarily by producing things, but by owning claims on claims. For a while, it felt like progress. Living standards rose. Consumption expanded. Crises were smoothed over with liquidity injections and stimulus. Each intervention reinforced the belief that paper wealth could be protected indefinitely, but cause and effect never disappear. They only delay their consequences. The breaking point came not as a single explosion, but as recurring shocks. Inflation eroded purchasing power. Asset bubbles inflated and burst. Debt levels reached heights that could never realistically be repaid. Each crisis followed the same pattern. Too many paper claims, chasing too little real value. And each time, the solution was the same: create more paper wealth to stabilize the system. The fallout was uneven and often invisible. Those closest to the creation of money benefited first. Asset owners saw prices rise. Savers saw their purchasing power decline. Wages lagged behind inflation. Wealth inequality widened, not because effort disappeared, but but because the system increasingly rewarded proximity to financial flows rather than contribution to real production. Attempts to fix the problem often made it worse. Regulations grew more complex. Interest rates were pushed lower and lower, eventually reaching zero and even negative territory. Money became cheaper, but stability did not improve. Each fix treated the symptoms: volatility, unemployment, market crashes, without addressing the core issue. Paper wealth had grown far larger than the real economy could support. Today, the parallels are impossible to ignore. Global debt now exceeds several times the size of the world's annual economic output. Financial assets are worth multiples of global GDP. Central banks create trillions with keystrokes, while real productivity grows slowly. Digital currencies, tokenized assets, and new forms of financial abstraction promise efficiency, but also repeat the same pattern or claims, same underlying value. History shows us that systems built primarily on belief can last a long time, but not forever. When confidence breaks, paper wealth reveals what it always was: a network of promises dependent on trust, stability, and continued growth. The danger is not that paper wealth exists, but that we forget what it represents and what it does not. There are 3 lessons hidden in this story. First, money is not wealth. It is a claim on wealth. Confusing the two leads to false security. Second, systems that reward financial expansion without real value creation eventually transfer risk downward, from institutions to individuals. And third, delayed consequences are still consequences. Ignoring them does not cancel them, it concentrates them. The open question is not whether paper wealth will face limits, but how and when those limits will be acknowledged. Will it happen gradually through inflation and slow decline, or suddenly through crisis and reset? History offers examples of both. The most important thing you can do is not panic, but understand. Understanding how paper wealth replaced real value gives you clarity in a system built on confusion. It helps you ask better questions, recognize repeating patterns, and make decisions grounded in reality rather than illusion. If you want to keep exploring the hidden forces shaping money, power, and the global economy, subscribe to the channel, because the more paper wealth grows, the more valuable real understanding becomes.